Hello, good evening, and welcome back to another episode of Minds on Guard, where we are learning how to guard our minds against all of the ways that the mainstream media manipulates our thoughts, tries to direct and control our behaviors through those manipulations, and all the ways, just that we generally interact with the media, the ways that it interacts with us, and taking a deep dive on the history, conceptual material, philosophical ways that we really live and operate in a really broad exchange of information with media or mediums in the 21st century. Recently, we've been looking at an article where we've been discussing some of the surface level features, and we're taking a little bit of a deeper dive. This will be our third dive into the article, where we are attempting to apply some of the understanding from a lot of the earlier videos in this series regarding all of the thought and behavior manipulations that are present in the media today. So far, like with the first two videos, we've seen some pretty interesting things, and we've really only just begun. We've seen the author create a type of what I perceive to be negative space within the headline that preps our minds to be moldable and, if we're not careful, able to be directed to accept a certain perspective that may not necessarily be one that we wish to hold ourselves. This negative space is then quickly capitalized on by the opening sections of the writing, specifically with the utilization of fantastic language and the repetition of a specific contextual filter on the narrative that's being written here and developed that really has a type of hypnotic effect on the reader. This sort of repetitive contextual frame using language that elicits a response. It elicits a type of, the word is, I would say, reification. We create this image in our minds, or at least we sort of imagine, using the words of the article, a type of worldview, or at least a type of hypothetical scenario. You know, we can recall the use of the words like imagine and dream and vision, as well as the use in framing of a paradigm that is meant to draw the reader or listener, however you're engaging with this article, into accepting the bold visions that are being elicited or drawn out by the speaker in this article. You know, it may be helpful to consider that this is a tactic used in advertising all of the time, and that maybe can help to get an idea of what's happening here. You know, if someone truly wants to sell you on an idea, they will employ every tactic to get you to accept their idea as one that's good, or, you know, ideally desirable, that you actually want to reach out, seek out, and gain this thing that is being sold. You should want what is being sold, you know, from the salesperson's perspective. And this is the contextual frame that's been established in this article in really only the first three small sections of writing here. It's going to be crucial that we understand this frame that has been created for us, that we hold it with us as we move through the rest of the article. I do see that it's far too easy to take for granted that we can rapidly give up control of our critical thought processes if we forget to remain rooted in objective truth at all times when engaging with the world around us. I see that this is what it means to keep our minds on guard. You know, when we're engaging with the media and they have built these contextual frames for us, if we're not careful, we will fall into accepting these frames as ones that are actually real versus what is really real. You know, we need to be on the lookout for times where the control of our thoughts is in danger of being taken over, or, you know, really given away to someone else. we are called in Paul's letters to take every thought captive. And this means that we're to devote ourselves to examining and then testing our thoughts so that we may discern truth, as in the real state of things, as they have been established by God. Discerning these things from what is false or delusional or in any way restructured to an alternate version of reality that is opposed to the objective, true reality of God's design. This does require diligence, and we cannot overlook even the slightest moment of lapse in our reasoning and discernment of truth. What may seem innocuous, maybe like the headline or some of these fantastical language uses, the repetition, it's very likely has outcropping effects that can and often do ripple out into quite impactful ways, like into other areas of our lives, or specifically our thinking in quite impactful ways. I like to think of and use examples in my own life to illustrate this point, as I think it kind of maybe helps sort of ground this and personalize this a little bit. When I was younger, I built a contextual frame for my life that was to become my paradigm for how I would process the information that I took in on a daily basis. We all do this. It's very normal. It informed everything I did and how I chose to move about the world. Now, the issue is much of it was developed from an adolescent or emotional filtering, and by my late 20s, because I hadn't really moved on from it, because I had sort of stayed stuck in that emotional filter and those adolescent paradigms, it left me with some really serious cognitive dissonance regarding what I felt was right versus what I was actually being shown to be right. This testing that I'm talking about, all of those things that come up when you really put those earlier paradigms to the test. It was only when I began this testing of the old paradigms against the truth of reality that I was able to spot the really egregious errors. And by then, the kernels of delusion that had grown from my earlier days, my adolescent days, they'd grown into a full-blown dysfunction that has required quite a lot of work to correct and then harmonize with the truth of God's reality. Okay, so let's jump back into the article and let's see what we can find hiding in plain sight in the writing. Picking up from where we left off. So our vision is that you, as a customer, walk into the supermarket in the coming years and you go to the frozen section to buy your meat and seafood. And you see a whole aisle of cell-based protein and another aisle of plant-based protein, and probably a very small aisle, a very small shelf of traditionally farmed meat and seafood, said Sriram, a stem cell biologist by training. Eventually, though, Sriram hopes that, quote, it will be plant-based and cell-based all the way so that we can see more animals outside, unquote. Shiak Meats uses cell-based technology to produce and cultivate meat from the stem cells of live animals. The cells are placed in bioreactors, and together with nutrients and the right conditions, they propagate. About after 4 to 6 weeks, the stem cells will be converted into consumable meat with the same look, taste, smell, and even texture of the meat consumers are used to. Okay. In this section, we see some pretty overt manipulation and really logically fallacious reasoning going on. First, as we recognized in the last video, we are being sold something here. And it's a vision that this CEO of this company, Shiak Meats, has for the future. I think it's strange to be given this image of abundance of one thing to be juxtaposed against a scarcity of another. That jumps out at me right away. Especially when we're not given a reason as to why one thing or just this why certain things should or would be in great supply while the other is lacking in any way. This could be considered a subtle either-or fallacy, as in we're given a scenario where only one of two options are available or acceptable, and really we're told which one that is going to be. So in truth, this is an either-or fallacy with a pretty heavy condition applied to it. And I point this out to state that most of the time, when an either-or scenario is being presented, there's usually a third, if not a fourth, fifth, even sixth, or so on, option that is not given consideration for various reasons. It's just outright ignored. This may be that the other options have either not been seen by the person giving them, or that they're purposefully being obfuscated. Regardless of which reason it is, the either-or fallacy is having an effect. And we should ask these questions like, why is there not the same amount of farm-raised meat as there is lab-created meat in this hypothetical supermarket? We're not told yet, but we see in the very next quote our second logical fallacy in as many quotations from our esteemed CEO. Quote, "Eventually, though, Sir Ram hopes that it will be plant-based and cell-based all the way so that we can see more animals outside," unquote. Now, I'm sorry, but I fail to see the connection between having more plant-based and cell-based products and there being more animals outside. Does that seem strange to anybody else? Not only is this a false dilemma, but it's a non sequitur and likely a straw man argument at its core, and at least in the way that it's being presented here. What kinds of animals is our CEO referring to? I see plenty outside right now, and there are massive, massive meat farms all over the country. Just look out your window. There's birds flying, squirrels, rabbits, everywhere. Why is this presented as a hopeful result of having more lab-based meat than real meat? How would the animals in question be, replenished, for lack of a better word? Are there not enough animals right now, like I said, at the current time? Would having more animals be really a good thing? If so, why? And if not, why not? We have no indication from any evidence presented in this article so far that having more lab-based meat will actually cause there to be more animals outside. It's these kinds of questions and observations that we need to look at, and when we do, we see that this really is just nonsense logically. It's fallacious and to a very troubling degree. So that's about all the time we have for this evening. We've covered a lot, some personal stuff, and, getting deeper into sort of trying to pin down specifics about logical fallacies, as well as understanding how to ask questions. As we go through the next week, between now and the next video, I want people to engage with this and think about how these quotes from the CEO in this article are full of reasoning errors, and then see if you can begin to spot other errors as you engage with the media around you on a daily basis. I will link the best resource I have for learning how to develop these thinking tools in the description box below. I've referred to it many times. It's the Frontisterium by a very good friend of mine, a man named Shane Roberts. That material is invaluable and well worth your time and investment in the subscription. Next week, we will continue, and until then, I hope you all stay safe. I hope you all look after one another, reach out to your loved ones, check in on them, and I hope you all stay diligent and vigilant with your minds firmly on guard.